Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a cloudy realm high above the mortal world, where lightning flashes from behind silk curtains, peacocks glide instead of pigeons, and divine gossip travels faster than Hermes on Red Bull. You find yourself floating along the frosty edges of Mount Olympus. The air is thin, crisp, and smells like burnt offerings and maybe unresolved marital tension. You're drifting closer now to a massive, glittering hall. And inside, that's Hera, queen of the gods, wife of Zeus, an absolute connoisseur of passive-aggressive punishment. Let's be clear, you probably won't survive this if you try reasoning with her. Hera holds grudges the way a dragon holds treasure. Tight. Forever. And if you've ever had an unfaithful partner who thinks disguising himself as a swan somehow makes cheating romantic, well, let's just say you and Hera might have a thing or two in common. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I love seeing how far and wide these stories travel. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to golden pillars and shimmering floors. The moment you try to sit up, a smug peacock struts past and whips its tail in your face. Fabulous. Hera's temple is always dramatic. You wander toward a marble balcony and peer out over a panorama of ancient Greece. Temples glint. Farmers shout. And somewhere down there, Zeus is probably transforming into a goat to woo a milkmaid. Again. But here, above the clouds, Hera is not amused. Not ever. And that's where your sleepy odyssey begins, in Hera's world. A world of celestial grandeur. And really bad relationship boundaries. Hera isn't just Zeus's wife. She's the goddess of marriage, women, family, and childbirth. Which is funny, given how she seems determined to ruin all those things for anyone who crosses her. Historians still argue whether Hera's persona was originally more nurturing, more Earth Mother, before centuries of patriarchal myth-spinning turned her into the embodiment of vengeance with nice hair. Today, you'll be trailing her. Not as a friend, no. You're more like a curious spirit with front-row seats to the most dysfunctional divine marriage in mythology. As you float past Olympus's throne room, you overhear the usual sounds. Thunderclaps of Zeus having another tantrum, Apollo tuning his lyre too loudly, and Ares making dramatic exits just to be asked why he's mad. But Hera? She's seated silently in her golden throne, lips pursed, fingers tapping the armrest. She's heard the rumors. Again. And let's just say she's not baking muffins about it. You glide closer and see her unfurl a scroll, a glowing, magically updated list of Zeus's latest indiscretions. Spoiler, it's long. Some names have stars next to them. Others have ominous red slashes. One entry just says, "Turned into bull again," in all caps. The divine equivalent of, "Are you serious right now?" Despite being queen of Olympus, Hera doesn't use lightning bolts or tidal waves to express anger. No, she prefers creativity, poetic justice, petty sabotage, and above all long games. Like generations long. You know, just to be thorough. You lean against a cloud pillar and watch her close her eyes, take a deep breath, and murmur a single name. Io. Oh, she's picking her first target for today. You float down slowly, following the echo of her voice as it drifts toward the mortal world below, where Io, a mortal priestess of Hera herself, awkward, is about to discover that being loved by Zeus might just be the worst thing that ever happens to her. As you drift through the bright morning haze of Earth's surface, you catch glimpses of earlier punishments. There's a suspiciously cow-like constellation overhead. Oh, we'll come back to that. A nymph's voice echoing in the woods, saying things she never meant to repeat. A woman in labor, forced to wait days because Hera refused to let the goddess of childbirth do her job. And Hera watching, always watching, from her starry perch with that same cool expression that says, "You brought this on yourself, darling." Still, it's hard not to feel a strange sympathy for her. Not approval, let's be real, turning people into animals or clouds isn't exactly mature, but maybe understanding. After all, she's the goddess of loyalty trapped in a world built around betrayal. She has power, but she's hemmed in. Respected, but mocked behind her back. Immortal, but never emotionally invincible. Historians still debate whether these myths reflect genuine fear of powerful women, or whether Hera's role is a cautionary tale, warning what happens when a wife dares to fight back. Either way, her story isn't boring. It's complicated, contradictory, and covered in glitter and goat hair. A soft wind brushes your cheek as you float higher again. Hera's voice hums faintly through the cosmos. She's preparing another punishment. This time with more flair, more symbolism, and probably an animal transformation or two. You glance back at Olympus once more and realize, this isn't just one story. It's a series of ancient soap operas starring one perpetually angry goddess in a divine slow-burn revenge arc. You take a deep breath, already feeling your limbs grow heavier, your thoughts floatier. But don't drift off just yet. We've got 19 more acts of divine retribution to explore. And next up, poor Io. Moo, you drift down into the mortal world, air thick with early morning mist and the hum of bees, though not even they seem as busy as Io is about to become. You land near a quiet grove just outside Argos, where a young priestess kneels before a small statue of Hera. Her robes flutter gently in the breeze. She doesn't know it yet, but this quiet moment of worship is about to go sideways. Io is one of Hera's favorites, a devoted acolyte, always on time for rituals. Probably alphabetizes the temple offerings. You know the type. But unfortunately for her, she also happens to be stunningly beautiful, which, in Greek mythology, is basically just a bullseye for trouble. And wouldn't you know it, Zeus notices. He doesn't show up as himself, of course. That would be too direct. No, he brings fog. Thick, golden, honey-smelling fog. The kind that turns day into twilight and makes everything feel slightly dreamlike. Except Io, who feels very much awake, and suddenly very not alone. You watch from the treetops as the fog thickens. There's a shimmer, a rustle, and then the unmistakable presence of something divine, breathing heavily like a bored lion. Zeus doesn't waste time. Let's just say subtlety has never been his strong suit. Historians still argue whether this particular encounter was consensual. Some texts paint Io as a willing participant, others as a victim. Either way, the outcome is the same, and Io's life is about to get radically more bovine. Because Hera knows. She always knows. The moment that fog rolls in, she sniffs the air from Olympus, raises one eyebrow, and mutters, "Fog again? Really?" Then she descends. You see her appear not with rage, but with chill elegance, like a queen walking into a party she wasn't invited to but intends to own. Zeus panics. He's mid-flirt, mid-transgression, mid-fog. Not ideal. So what does he do? He turns Io into a cow. Yes, a literal cow. White, sleek, with sorrowful brown eyes and a temple garland still tangled in her horns. Zeus offers her to Hera as a gift. Look, darling, a lovely heifer, no idea where she came from. And Hera just stares. And smiles. It's not a nice smile. "Why, what a thoughtful present," she says, petting the cow's flank like a Bond villain. "I'll cherish her." Cue Io's internal cow scream. And that's how Io ends up in a pasture, munching grass and wondering how her life went from temple incense to cud chewing. But Hera doesn't stop there. Oh no. She assigns Argus Panoptes, the 100-eyed giant, to watch over Io. Because what's better than turning your husband's lover into a cow? Putting a hypervigilant security guard on her, just in case she tries to hoof it. Argus is unique. All eyes, no charm. He never sleeps because only some of his eyes close at a time. Which sounds useful until you realize that means Io gets no privacy. Ever. It's like having 24/7 surveillance by a disco ball made of eyeballs. You trail Io as she's led from field to field. Sometimes she tries to moo at passing humans, hoping they'll recognize her. But people don't usually expect cows to cry, or spell their names with hooves. And so she's stuck, trapped in this surreal pasture prison, watched constantly, mourning her lost humanity. Historians still debate whether Hera's punishment was more about the betrayal or the insult. After all, turning someone into a cow isn't just a curse, it's also, frankly, kind of humiliating. A divine demotion to barnyard status. But Zeus isn't done either. He sends Hermes, the god of sneakiness and stylish hats, to rescue Io. And Hermes, being Hermes, doesn't just sneak in. No, he strolls up to Argus with a lyre and tells him a long, boring story. So boring, in fact, that even Argus's eyes can't stay open. One by one, eyelids droop. Until finally, Argus sleeps. And Hermes strikes. It's quick. One clean slice. The eyes dim. And Argus is no more. Io runs. Hooves pounding the dirt. Grass blurring past. She's free. Or so she thinks. Because Hera sees the body of Argus and thinks, you killed my 100-eyed guard cow-sitter. Cute. And instead of mercy, she sends a gadfly. A tiny, buzzing, stinging tormentor that follows Io across the known world. Wherever she runs, it follows. Over mountains. Through swamps. Across deserts. stinging and buzzing and reminding her, "You don't escape Hera." You hover overhead as Io crosses into Egypt, her eyes wild, her flanks heaving. And finally, Hera relents. The gadfly vanishes. Io collapses beside the Nile. And there, she gives birth to a child. A new lineage begins. According to some versions, Io becomes part of Egyptian mythology, worshipped as Isis, or simply honored as a goddess who endured divine wrath and survived. Hera, for her part, commemorates Argus by plucking out his eyes and placing them on the tail of her favorite bird. That's right. The peacock's tail? Those hypnotic circles? All Argus. A fashion statement and a flex. You float back upward, leaving Io resting in the reeds, her story finally settling into myth. And Hera? She's already eyeing her next target. Because with Zeus, the love triangle never ends. It's more like a carousel. And coming up next? A golden apple, 3 jealous goddesses, and a very poor judgment. You rise again through the thin, glimmering sky, as soft clouds part to reveal a curious garden. Not just any garden, this one belongs to the Hesperides, daughters of the evening, who guard a tree of golden apples. You might expect it to be peaceful, maybe fragrant with ambrosia-scented breeze. But no, there's tension in the petals. A divine storm is brewing in the blooms. You hover beside Hera as she strides through rows of celestial fruit trees, her sandals clicking like the tick of a very judgmental clock. She plucks one of the golden apples, polishes it on her sleeve, and reads the inscription aloud, "To the fairest." Her eyebrow lifts. "Cute," she mutters, and tosses the apple over her shoulder. Big mistake. See, the apple isn't just shiny. It was handcrafted by Eris, goddess of chaos, who wasn't invited to a wedding. Naturally, she showed up anyway and lobbed this apple into the crowd like a divine grenade. Drama instantly exploded. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite all reached for it at once. Historians still argue whether this apple incident was just a mythological metaphor for feminine rivalry, or if it was a handy way to justify a certain 10-year war. Either way, you float closer to witness the celestial equivalent of a high school hallway spat among immortals. They bicker. They glare. They insist. And none of them will back down. So Zeus, in a rare flash of self-preservation, refuses to judge. He doesn't need that smoke. Instead, he sends them down to a mortal named Paris, a Trojan prince with good hair and the misfortune of being very available. You now find yourself lounging invisibly on Mount Ida, where Paris is tending sheep, looking very peaceful and totally unaware that 3 literal goddesses are about to crash his hillside picnic. And crash it they do. Each one steps forward like a contestant on Divine Bachelorette, Myth Edition. Athena offers wisdom and military glory. Hera offers kingship and power. Aphrodite? She promises the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. You don't have to guess who wins. Paris, being a young man with functioning eyes and limited foresight, chooses Aphrodite. He hands her the apple. Hera's smile freezes. Athena rolls her eyes so hard the earth tilts. Aphrodite, of course, winks. And thus begins the slow, inevitable path to war. Hera, spurned and fuming, doesn't just walk away. No, she tucks that insult deep into the folds of her gown, right next to the list of everyone she plans to ruin. You float beside her again, back in Olympus, where she's now plotting how to make this little decision hurt. And oh, does she succeed. You follow her influence as it slithers into every corner of the Trojan War. She sides firmly with the Greeks. Not because she particularly loves them, but because Paris, that guy, lives in Troy. And as far as Hera's concerned, that city might as well be renamed Pettyville. She whispers tactics into generals' dreams. She manipulates winds, pushes ships, stirs jealousies. And most of all, she makes sure the Trojans suffer, especially the women. Because in Hera's world, beauty isn't a blessing. It's a liability. You peek into a battle tent where a woman named Helen weeps. The face that launched 1,000 ships. That's her. Aphrodite's prize to Paris. But the way Hera sees it, Helen is just another pawn in the endless game of divine retribution. Aphrodite, of course, tries to shield her. But Hera's no amateur. She's playing the long game. She doesn't need to strike directly. She just ensures everything Helen touches turns to guilt and ruin. The war stretches on. Years pass. Heroes fall. And through it all, Hera never forgets the apple. Because for her, this wasn't just about beauty. It was about respect. And you don't disrespect the Queen of Olympus without consequences that echo across empires. Historians still debate how much the gods actually influenced mortal wars, or whether myths like these were just a way for ancient Greeks to explain senseless destruction with celestial soap operas. But you can't deny the story has staying power. As you hover above the battlefield, you can almost hear Hera's voice on the wind, calm and precise. Let them bleed. He chose wrong. The battle cries fade. The fires dim. But you know Hera's work is far from over. She still has names to cross off her scroll, women to curse, bloodlines to complicate, and poetic justice to deliver like divine Amazon packages. Next day vengeance, always on time. You float higher, away from the smoldering coasts of Troy, the sound of clashing swords replaced by the soft rustle of laurel leaves. Next up, a woman named Leto carrying twins. Unfortunately for her, Hera isn't feeling generous toward pregnant women today. Or ever, you drift into a moonlit forest, where a quiet woman tiptoes through reeds, clutching her swelling belly. Her name is Leto, and she's about as pregnant as a mythological figure can get, glowing, exhausted, and trying not to be murdered by divine jealousy. Leto's predicament? She's carrying twins. Not just any twins, mind you, Apollo and Artemis. And yes, the father is Zeus. Naturally, Hera, upon hearing the news, reacts with her signature cocktail of cold fury and petty sabotage. She doesn't descend with fire and brimstone. Oh no, she enacts a policy. A rule so spiteful, it could only come from a goddess who's been cheated on more times than there are stars in the sky. She decrees that no land, no city, no island on earth may offer Leto sanctuary. You know, just a little worldwide eviction notice. Nothing personal. Historians still argue whether this decree was meant as a symbolic reminder of Hera's control over all domains, or if it reflected ancient anxieties about childbirth and exile. Either way, the effect is chilling. You float beside Leto as she trudges across desolate plains, ocean cliffs, craggy mountain paths. She asks, she pleads, she begs for shelter. But every village and grove turns her away, scared of Hera's wrath. Even places where goats outnumber people politely decline. Sorry, full up, they mumble, bolting doors behind them. Meanwhile, the twins grow heavier. Her back aches. Her feet swell. And yes, she cries, quietly into her robes, because even divine mothers get overwhelmed. Eventually, you see her collapse by the sea, ready to give up. And that's when salvation drifts into view. Not land exactly, but something close. A floating island, unanchored, forgotten by the gods' property records. It's called Delos. Technically not a landmass. Technically not bound by Hera's law. It bobs gently, like a life raft for the divinely unwanted. You drift down as Leto drags herself onto its rocky shore. There's no temple here. No midwife. Just salty wind and stubborn sand. And yet, for the first time in months, no one's chasing her. She breathes. She lies back. And she screams. Because childbirth, even in myths, is no spa day. Here's the twist. Hera, still furious, has also blocked Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, from helping. So Leto goes into labor, and stays in labor. For days. No contractions. No relief. Just pain. And Hera smiling from above like a mother-in-law who brought popcorn. It's Artemis who arrives first, despite it all. And yes, she's born without assistance, takes one look around, and immediately helps deliver her own brother. Because she's Artemis. Get used to it. You watch as Apollo emerges in a flash of gold. The air changes. The island glows. And somewhere, far off, a harp string twangs dramatically. They've arrived. Hera hears the news and does not clap. But she can't undo it. The twins are born. The island of Delos is now sacred, anchored in myth. Leto finally rests, arms wrapped around her children, who will grow into gods of prophecy, poetry, archery, and occasional mass smiting. You glance upward. Hera watches from a swirling cloud, expression unreadable. You think, for a moment, she might be moved. Touched even. And then she vanishes. Because she's already planning her next move. A new name flickers into her thoughts, Semele. Immortal. Pregnant. Again, you glide now over the rooftops of Thebes, a city bustling with prophecy, pride, and a touch too much drama. The stars above pulse a little brighter, as though bracing for impact. Because in a modest little house on the city's edge, Semele, a mortal woman and priestess, is brushing her hair and wondering whether she should tell her parents about the lightning god she's dating. Yes, Semele. Mortal. Beautiful. And of course chosen by Zeus. Because of course. Zeus visits her in disguise, as he often does, sometimes cloaked in shadows, sometimes a golden mist, always just enough mystery to make a girl swoon. Semele falls for him, utterly. and eventually, predictably, she becomes pregnant. You pause above her chamber and watch her hum softly, one hand on her belly. There's something innocent here, even sweet. She thinks she's special, protected, loved, and in a way she is. But not by Hera. Up on Olympus, Hera hears the news with the kind of silence that makes the air colder. She doesn't rage this time. She doesn't throw lightning. No, she smiles. Thin and sharp. She's going to use words. Historians still argue whether Hera's tactics in this myth reflect deeper views on female rivalry, or whether they're simply dramatic devices to justify tragic endings. But what's clear is that Hera's most devastating weapon isn't power, it's doubt. You follow her down to Thebes, where she appears not as herself, but in the form of an old woman. Wrinkled, kind-eyed, gentle in speech. She sits beside Semele in the temple garden and murmurs, "My dear, are you certain it's Zeus you've been seeing? You know how gods can deceive." Semele pauses. The seed is planted. The next day, when Zeus returns, Semele looks up at him, suddenly unsure. "If you truly love me," she whispers, "show me your real form." You feel the air pull tight, as though the world knows what's coming. Zeus refuses, pleads, begs, but Semele insists. And finally, bound by oath, he reveals himself. Thunder, fire, celestial radiance beyond comprehension. The full divine form of a god, unfiltered. And in an instant, Semele burns. Her body disintegrates, her soul flares, and all that remains is a faint echo and the scent of scorched jasmine. But not everything is lost, because in that blaze something stirs. A premature child, divine, still forming, writhes within the flames. Zeus, frantic, reaches into the ashes and pulls him out. He sews the child into his own thigh. Yes, his thigh. Because this is mythology and nothing is ever normal. You hover silently, watching as months pass. The child grows inside Zeus. And when the time comes, he is born again, fully formed, wailing, wrapped in smoke. His name? Dionysus. God of wine, madness, theater, ecstasy. A symbol of joy born from tragedy. And Hera? Well, let's just say she's not thrilled that the thigh baby survived. But for now, she lets it go. Not because she's merciful, but because she's patient. The world turns. Dionysus will have his own trials. But Hera's already eyeing her next target. And this one she's been mad at since he was a baby. Because now, it's Hercules' time. You feel the atmosphere shift as you rise above a quiet countryside. The stars seem to blink a little faster tonight, nervous perhaps. Somewhere, a sheep bleats in the dark, entirely unaware that it's living next to the soon-to-be most overworked demigod in Greek mythology. You're now hovering over Thebes again. But this time, your focus isn't Semele's scorched memory. It's the nursery window of another woman, Alcmene. Inside, a mother rocks her infant gently by the firelight. The child in her arms has fists like pebbles and the vague aura of will definitely punch monsters when older. His name is Heracles, though you probably know him better by his Roman alias, Hercules. And here's the twist. Zeus is his dad. Again. Hera, as you might expect, is delighted. No, wait, sorry. She's furious. Absolutely incandescent. You can practically see the Olympus clouds smoldering. She doesn't go for immediate destruction, though. Not her style. Hera prefers torment spread across decades like a fine smear of divine peanut butter. Heracles will not simply be punished. He will be tested. But first, she tries the classic approach, baby murder. One night, as Alcmene sleeps, Hera sends 2 serpents slithering into the crib, eyes glowing, tongues flicking. Most babies cry. Heracles? He giggles, grabs a snake in each pudgy fist, and strangles them like overenthusiastic squeaky toys. You hover in awe. Hera, watching from the heavens, mutters something probably unprintable and crosses out snake plan. So she pivots to psychological warfare. You follow Heracles as he grows, strong, loud, heroic, and increasingly exhausted. Hera poisons his fate at every turn. She whispers to kings, curses tasks, and finally, most famously, triggers a moment of madness. In a fit of divine-induced frenzy, Heracles slays his own wife and children. When the fog lifts and the horror dawns, he's broken, weeping, lost. And that's when the punishment becomes atonement. The Oracle of Delphi tells him he must serve King Eurystheus and complete 10 labors. No, wait, 12, after some technical disqualifications, Hera again. Each task is impossible. Kill the Nemean lion. Clean the Augean stables. Fetch Cerberus from the underworld. All of it? Hera's influence. You float beside him as he slogs through swamp, muck, blood, and gods know what else. Behind each corner, Hera's watching. Not laughing, not gloating, just watching, like a high school vice principal who already knows your lunch money is gone. Historians still argue whether Hera's vendetta made Heracles a true hero, or simply a pawn shaped by divine cruelty. Either way, the result is the same, pain turned into myth. And yet, through it all, something strange happens. Heracles doesn't just endure. He triumphs. Each task, each heartbreak, makes him stronger, more human, more godlike. Until finally, after all the monsters are slain, all the trials survived, he dies. But not really. Zeus snatches him from the flames and carries him to Olympus, granting him immortality. And here's the kicker, Hera accepts it. Not graciously, but formally. You drift beside her at the immortal banquet as she lifts a cup of ambrosia and toasts her former nemesis. Then, in an even stranger move, she offers her daughter Hebe's hand in marriage. Yes, Heracles, the son she hated, becomes her son-in-law. Is it forgiveness? A power play? A PR move? Historians still debate it. But for one glittering moment, the war ends. You rise slowly now, leaving Olympus behind, watching Heracles and Hebe dance in golden halls. The harp music fades, and so does Hera's scowl. But only for now. Because deep in the woods, an echo bounces off mossy stones. And Hera pricks up her ears. There's another nymph in the story. Her name is Echo. And Hera is not done being petty. The wind shifts as you drift gently down into the shadowy hush of a forest. It's damp and green, and humming with insects. Somewhere nearby, a brook laughs softly over smooth stones, and the leaves above you twitch like they've just heard a juicy secret. You step softly over moss, following the sound of someone talking. Or maybe echoing. Hello! Hello! Who's there? Who's there? Meet Echo, a mountain nymph with a voice like honey, and the kind of charm that could keep a room full of bored gods chuckling for hours. She's quick, clever, and unfortunately, terrible at keeping her mouth shut. You find her lounging on a rock, mid-gossip with 3 other nymphs about Zeus's latest escapade. That's when Hera arrives. Now, Hera doesn't exactly hate Echo at first. But Echo, bless her talkative heart, has been covering for Zeus. Distracting Hera with stories and flattery, while Zeus sneaks off to do Zeus things. You know the drill by now. When Hera figures it out, she doesn't scream. She doesn't summon a storm. She just smiles dangerously. Then she curses Echo. From now on, Echo will only be able to repeat the last few words spoken to her. No original thoughts. No witty comebacks. Just recycled sound bites forever. The ultimate punishment for a chatterbox. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to explain the literal phenomenon of echoes, or whether it was an allegory for how women's voices were historically silenced. Either way, the result is both clever and heartbreaking. You trail Echo as she wanders the woods, newly mute in her own thoughts. She tries to speak. Can't. Tries again. Nothing but fragments of others' voices, echoing like ghost ripples. And then she sees him. A boy. Not just any boy, Narcissus. Beautiful. Vain. Basically the kind of person who refreshes his own reflection on Olympus book every 5 seconds. He's out hunting, or pretending to, with the kind of lazy grace that makes nymphs swoon. Including Echo. She follows him silently for days, her love growing louder even as her voice grows quieter. One day, she gathers her courage and steps into his path. She tries to speak. Fails. Finally, she repeats his words back to him, hoping he'll understand. Who's there? There. Come here. Here. Let's meet. Meet. Narcissus, annoyed and vain, brushes her off. I'd rather die than love you, he says. And Echo, crushed, can only murmur, love you. You watch her fade after that. She doesn't die exactly. She just becomes less. Her body vanishes, but her voice remains, tangled in the canyons and cliffs of Greece. Every time someone shouts into a valley, Echo answers. Always answering. Never heard. Hera doesn't gloat. Not this time. She watches Echo vanish and then turns her gaze toward the horizon. Because Zeus is still being Zeus. And there's another young woman in the woods, running. Her name is Callisto. And she's next. You drift farther into the woods, where the trees grow taller, the shadows deeper, and the air has that distinct smell of pine, moss, and impending divine interference. Up ahead, in a sun-dappled clearing, a young woman knocks an arrow and draws her bow. Her eyes are sharp, her stance steady. She's a hunter, a proud follower of Artemis, and she has no idea that her loyalty is about to be rewarded with a cosmic-sized betrayal. Her name is Callisto. She's not just any hunter, she's a sworn virgin, part of Artemis's inner circle. That means strength, independence, and most importantly, no boys allowed. The goddess is very clear on this. It's girlhood or bust. You watch Callisto chase deer through the forest, laughing freely. She's admired, trusted. She sleeps under stars and lives on wild berries and rainwater. But you also see the moment everything shifts. Because Zeus sees her. Of course. Now to be fair, Callisto isn't interested. Not even a little. But Zeus has never been great with boundaries, and this time, he doesn't show up as a golden fog or a bull. No, he disguises himself as Artemis. Yes, her actual goddess. Her mentor. The one person Callisto trusts completely. You float above the canopy, unable to look away as Zeus takes full advantage of that trust. The myth is vague about what happens next, but the implications are clear and deeply unsettling. Callisto vanishes for a while after that, hides in caves, avoids the others. Something in her has shifted. She's quieter now, and eventually her secret becomes too large to hide. She's pregnant. You can almost hear the gasp ripple through Artemis's followers. Betrayal, shame, confusion. Callisto swears she's innocent, that she didn't choose this. But Artemis? She banishes her. And then comes Hera. She's not mad because Callisto cheated. She knows Zeus's role. She's mad because it happened again. Another mortal. Another child. Another reminder that her marriage is a farce in a golden crown. So she does what she does best. She transforms. This time, it's Callisto who changes. Hera turns her into a bear. Yes, a bear. Furry clawed, alone in the woods. No mother. No friends. No one to hear her story. You follow her as she lumbers through the forest, dodging hunters who once knew her name. Time passes. She gives birth to a son, Arcas. He grows up human, unaware that the bear watching from afar is his mother. Years later, in a tragic twist that only the Greeks could write, Arcas nearly kills her. They meet in the woods, hunter and hunted. He raises his spear. And that's when Zeus finally does something decent. He turns them both into constellations. Callisto becomes Ursa Major. Arcas, Ursa Minor. They rise into the sky, forever spinning, never touching, always watched. You glance upward and see them now, gliding through the heavens. Stars where a mother and son should be. But even this doesn't stop Hera from getting the last word. She begs Oceanus, the ancient sea god, to deny the bare constellations the privilege of dipping below the horizon. And so they never rest. The stars of Ursa Major and Ursa Minor never set. Eternal punishment, cosmic style. Historians still debate whether this myth was intended to explain star patterns, or to warn women of the dangers of disobedience, even when the rules are unfair. Maybe both. You float back down slowly, the starlight trailing behind you like smoke. And now, far below, you sense something shifting. Hera's planning something new. Not just a punishment, a creation. A creature born of vengeance. And he'll have serpent legs. You descend once again through Olympian haze, this time to a strange and restless place. Not quite heaven, not quite earth. The clouds churn with possibility and mischief, and somewhere in the distance, a thunderclap is definitely faking innocence. Hera stands in the middle of it all, arms crossed, lips tight. She's not responding this time. She's initiating. Because if Zeus gets to create chaos, why can't she? Now, you may recall that Hera doesn't exactly enjoy the whole motherhood theme, especially when it comes with Zeus's name attached. But today, she decides to flip the script. She's going to have a child all by herself. No father, no Zeus, just Hera and an unshakable grudge. Historians still argue whether this was an early myth exploring parthenogenesis, divine feminism, or just a very bold attempt at magical spite. But regardless of motive, the result is the same. She stamps her foot, murmurs ancient words, and out he comes. A baby, with serpent legs, and an attitude problem. His name is Typhon. You hover back a little, just in case, because this is no ordinary divine child. He cries and wins, his spit scorches soil, and his diaper situation is frankly terrifying. Hera watches him grow rapidly into a towering monstrosity, part man, part dragon, all chaos. Zeus takes one look and panics. Because Typhon isn't just loud, he's powerful. Too powerful. As the myth goes, Typhon grows so massive that his head brushes the stars. He breathes fire, hurls mountains, and casually starts challenging gods for supremacy. Which is awkward, because Hera created him out of pettiness, not ambition. Now, the details get fuzzy here. Some versions say she disowns him once he turns destructive. Others say she proudly cheers from the sidelines. Historians still debate how involved Hera remained after Typhon's teenage rebellion phase turned into full-scale divine war. What is clear? Typhon nearly wins. You watch as Olympus trembles. The gods flee to Egypt, yes, Egypt, transform into animals and hide. Zeus is wounded. The heavens split. Chaos reigns. And yet, somehow, eventually, Zeus regains his strength. With the help of Hermes, again, and a few lightning bolts, he defeats Typhon, burying him beneath Mount Etna, where his writhing still causes volcanic eruptions today. But the damage is done. Hera's one attempt at self-powered vengeance backfires magnificently. She created a being strong enough to destroy the very order she embodies. She doesn't gloat. She doesn't speak. She simply returns to Olympus, sits down, and stares into space for a century or two. Because let's face it, revenge parenting is exhausting. Still, she can't help but notice that her daughter Hebe is bringing her the wrong kind of wine again. And maybe, just maybe, there's still time to micromanage someone else's destiny. Because if you can't beat them, control their serving trays. Olympus is unusually quiet. The clouds have calmed, the stars have taken a deep breath, and the gods are trying to pretend they didn't just collectively run away from Hera's rage baby. It's the divine version of let's never talk about that again. But you, floating as ever in your invisible cloak of sleepiness, know that something else is brewing. Not war. Not chaos. This time it's dinner. More specifically, Hera is supervising the evening feast. You glide gently toward the hall of golden columns where ambrosia flows like spring water, and the air smells like rose petals, burnt honey, and passive aggression. At the center of it all, Hebe. Yes, Hebe, the daughter of Hera and Zeus, goddess of eternal youth, cupbearer to the gods, and currently, the most micromanaged in turn in existence. You watch her move gracefully between the couches of lounging immortals, refilling goblets, smiling politely and almost not quite, spilling nothing. Behind her, Hera watches with the intensity of a stage mom at a toddler pageant. Not too fast, darling. Elbows in. Pour from the gold pitcher, not near it. And posture, Hebe. You're not immortal. Hebe smiles through it. You can tell she's used to it. She was born into this after all. But still, youth is eternal only if you don't snap first. Historians still debate Hebe's mythological significance. Was she a symbol of vitality? A model of dutiful femininity? Or just a convenient divine barista? Regardless, her job isn't glamorous. And with Hera for a mother, every pour of ambrosia is a performance review. At one point, Dionysus, who is, unsurprisingly, already tipsy, tries to flirt with her. Hebe ignores him. Hera shoots him a glance that could peel the grapes off his wreath. He quietly slides away, knocking over a goblet and pretending he meant to do that. Hebe returns to her duties. But you sense something deeper here. Hera isn't just overbearing, she's afraid. Of what, exactly? Losing control? Watching her daughter be devoured by the same system that burned Semele, ruined Callisto, exiled Leto? Maybe Hera's meddling isn't just vanity. Maybe it's protection, wrapped in perfectionism, tied up in gold ribbons of expectation. Still, there's tension brewing beneath Hebe's polite smile. She wants more. You can feel it. And one day she'll get it. Because remember Heracles? The one Hera spent years tormenting? He's about to become Hebe's husband. Oh yes, the son of Zeus and immortal, elevated to Olympus after his death, becomes immortal, and marries Hera's daughter. You glide forward in time, just a little, and peek into the wedding. Hebe is radiant. Heracles looks surprised he's allowed in. Hera sits stiffly, expression unreadable, lips pressed so tightly they might shatter. Historians still argue if this marriage was Hera's way of closing the grudge loop. Maybe she decided to make peace. Or maybe it was Zeus's idea, and Hera just didn't veto it out of exhaustion. We'll never know. But there's one detail you catch, hovering just over the altar. As Hebe and Heracles exchange glances, Hera finally speaks. Don't make her cry, she says quietly. Because I will notice. And that might be the closest thing to affection Hera has ever allowed herself to show. You fade back now, rising above Olympus once more. The ambrosia flows. The stars blink. And somewhere, far across the Aegean, three goddesses are still side-eyeing each other about that apple. Because Hera's work is never truly done. And next, she's going to start a war. But not with swords. With beauty. You float gently now above a windswept hillside in Phrygia, where the air smells like pomegranates and destiny. Below you, the sun is just beginning to touch the bronze rooftops of a city whose name you already know, Troy. But we're not at the war yet. No, you've time-traveled just a bit backward, to the day everything really began, not with a siege or a sword, but with an invitation. And a snub. You see, the gods are throwing a wedding. Peleus and Thetis, one a mortal hero, the other a sea nymph. It's a big deal. Everyone who's anyone gets invited. Except one. Eris, goddess of discord. Now, if you've learned anything from Hera's previous grudges, it's that excluding a goddess never ends well. And Eris? She doesn't take it lightly. She doesn't show up and throw a fit. No, she does something much, much worse. She crafts a golden apple. On it, she inscribes 3 little words, to the fairest. Then she rolls it into the wedding banquet like a glittering time bomb. And you know what happens next, because you've already seen the fallout. Hera sees the apple. So does Athena. And Aphrodite. 3 goddesses. 1 golden insult. And the worst part, no clear rules. No category breakdown. Just, the fairest. The bickering starts instantly. Athena argues beauty of wisdom. Aphrodite says desire is the real power. Hera doesn't need to argue. She is the queen of Olympus. Obviously she's the fairest. Obviously. But Zeus, ever the coward when it comes to female conflict, steps aside and appoints a judge. A mortal one. Paris of Troy. You watch as Hermes whisks the 3 goddesses down to Mount Ida, where Paris is tending sheep and trying not to look too mortal in the face of divine radiance. One by one they offer bribes. Athena promises wisdom and battle glory. Hera promises power, kingship, dominion, wealth. Aphrodite? She offers the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris chooses Aphrodite. Of course he does. And in that moment, you feel it, that subtle cosmic shift. Hera's eyes narrow. She says nothing. But deep in her mind, a plan is already forming. She doesn't throw a tantrum. She doesn't turn Paris into a lizard. She plays the long game. She lets the consequences unfold. Helen is whisked away. Troy prepares for battle. And Hera? She picks her side. Not because she likes the Greeks, but because she really doesn't like Paris. And she will see his city burn. Historians still argue whether this whole myth was invented to explain why the gods were so involved in the Trojan War, or whether it was a sly commentary on how male egos will literally start a war because 3 women wouldn't stop arguing over a compliment. But you know the truth. You've seen it unfold. This wasn't about beauty. It was about judgment. And Hera was not the one who lost her temper. She was the one who kept the score. Now, as the Aegean winds gather and ships begin to creak toward battle, you drift west, toward a different island, a different thread in Hera's tapestry. Because there's a girl on Naxos, waking up with a hangover and a broken heart. And Hera? She's not going to make it any easier. The waves lap gently against the rocky shore of Naxos, where a single ship is already disappearing into the horizon. You drift downward through the humid, citrus-scented air, circling a figure curled on the sand. Ariadne, still in her party dress, still asleep, and very much abandoned. The night before, she was dancing under the stars with Theseus, her escape from Crete boyfriend, who swore to love her forever. The same Theseus she helped escape the labyrinth. The same Theseus she saved from being eaten by her half-brother, the Minotaur. And now, gone. No note. No goodbye. Just a splash of footprints leading back to the boat, and the faint echo of a guy making "It's not you, it's Athens" excuses to his crew. Historians still argue whether Theseus was ordered by the gods to leave Ariadne, or if he was just kind of a jerk. Either way, you watch as she stirs, opens her eyes, and realizes she's alone. Her mascara's already smudged. You'd think this would be the part where Hera offers comfort. After all, Ariadne was just trying to follow love. Surely the goddess of marriage could show a little sympathy? Nope. Hera remembers everything. And Ariadne is guilty by association, daughter of Pasiphae, wife of King Minos, and tangled up in a whole bloodline of monster births and labyrinth drama. Hera sees her as another thread in Zeus's ever-expanding quilt of mortal entanglements, even if this time, technically, he wasn't involved. You watch as clouds gather, not above, but around Ariadne's heart. She waits for Theseus to come back. For days. Sunburned. Thirsty. Hopeful. Until finally, something does arrive. Not a boat. A god. Dionysus. Yes, that Dionysus. God of wine, theater, madness, and Hera's least favorite stepchild. He shows up in a whirlwind of ivy, song, and questionable fashion. His retinue of nymphs and satyrs throw an impromptu rave. Ariadne, blinking and salt-crusted, just stares. And then somehow she laughs. Because madness, at this point, is more comforting than clarity. Dionysus lifts her up, not just emotionally but literally, into the stars. He crowns her with a constellation, offers her immortality, and makes her his wife. A happy ending? Almost. Except Hera never forgets. You trail her as she watches from afar, lips pursed, wine untouched. Dionysus is the son of Semele, the mortal she incinerated. And now he's marrying another mortal turned divine. In front of everyone? It's enough to make her redecorate Olympus out of sheer spite. Still, there's a part of her, just a flicker, that watches Ariadne laughing among vines and starlight and thinks, maybe she's earned it, but she doesn't say it. Instead, she turns away, footsteps already echoing toward a distant battlefield. Because another hero is about to rise. A hero she once tried to crush. And now she'll have to toast his ascension. Heracles. Again, the sky over Olympus crackles faintly, not with thunder, but with tension. You glide over silver clouds, following the quiet click of sandals echoing through polished marble corridors. Hera's expression is unreadable again, a practiced mask. The kind only gods, queens, and particularly petty co-workers can wear for centuries without cracking. Because today is Heracles' promotion day. Yes, that Heracles, the same half-mortal strongman she tried to crush since infancy. The one she sent madness to. The one she forced to clean stables, slay hydras, and wrestle monsters no one even wanted around anymore. The one who time and again survived everything she threw at him. And now he's becoming a god. You descend into Olympus's great hall, where the gods are already gathering. Gowns flowing, sandals gleaming, goblets full. The mood is celebratory but tight. Like a wedding where the bride's mother is barely holding it together. Heracles arrives last. His footsteps are heavy, measured, and just a little awkward, like someone who still isn't quite sure he's supposed to be here. His lion-skin cape drapes casually over one shoulder. His club hangs from a golden belt. He bows. Zeus beams. Apollo plays something that's either a hymn or a power ballad. And Hera claps. Slowly. A smattering of polite applause follows her lead. You hover nearby, watching her eyes. There's no fury now. No gloating. Just a cool calculation. She's doing the math of eternity. Heracles is immortal now. That means he's family. Forever. And so, in true diplomatic fashion, she does the one thing no one expected. She offers him her daughter. Not as an insult. Not as a trap. As a peace treaty. Heracles and Hebe. Strength and youth. Brawn and grace. A balance. A mythological marriage that ties up one of Olympus's messiest feuds with a gold-trimmed bow. Historians still debate whether Hera's acceptance of Heracles was sincere or strategic. Was it forgiveness? Fatigue? Did she finally admire his resilience, or just realize she couldn't stop him? You watch as the couple exchanges garlands beneath a canopy of stars. Hebe glows. Heracles smiles, unsure but honored. Dionysus raises a toast. Even Ares, sulking in the corner, raises an eyebrow in reluctant respect. And Hera? She stands at the edge of it all, still as marble. But not unmoved. Because maybe, just maybe, this was never about vengeance. Maybe it was about control. About reminding the cosmos that she is not to be overlooked. That while Zeus may chase, charm, and cheat, she remains. Dignified. Sharp. Unyielding. You drift higher as the wedding feast begins, watching ambrosia flow and stars blink a little brighter. It should feel like closure. But Hera doesn't deal in happy endings. Only elegant pauses. Because somewhere far below, a white cow is grazing near the Nile. And her name is Io. Again, the wind changes again. It carries the warm scent of papyrus, lotus flowers, and something older, dusty, divine, and tinged with transformation. You follow the breeze south now, far from Olympus, far from the golden halls and ambrosia-slick feasts. You arrive at the banks of the Nile. And there, grazing beneath a palm tree, is a cow. A very familiar cow. Yes, Io. Again. Or rather, what remains of her legend. Because by now, her story has shifted, rippled, twisted into something else. Time has passed since her transformation, her flight from Argus, her torments at the buzzing wings of Hera's gadfly. You remember all that, the pacing hooves, the endless flight, the soft, desperate moos in the night. But this Io, she's different now. Still a symbol. Still sacred. But in this version, she's a queen. A goddess. In Egypt. Historians still debate how Io's myth merged with Egyptian worship. How a fleeing cowgirl from Argos became associated with Isis, or perhaps Hathor, deities of motherhood, magic, and the moon. Some say it was an attempt to bridge Greek and Egyptian theology. Others think the Greeks simply couldn't resist adding more epilogues to an already chaotic saga. You hover beside a quiet shrine where priests chant softly in Io's name. Not Io exactly, but some iteration of her. A divine woman once cursed, now revered. Her pain transfigured into power. Her suffering rewritten into sacred history. And Hera, oddly silent. You look for her in the clouds, expecting a storm, a snarl, a last-minute insult. But nothing. No peacock feathers ruffle the air. No divine glare shimmers down from Olympus. Just stillness. As if, finally, Hera has let this one go. Not out of kindness. Not because she regrets it. But maybe because Io won. She endured the punishment. The exile. The degradation. And now, in this foreign land, she wears a crown made not of gold, but of survival. You drift over the temple, hearing names echo in languages both strange and familiar. The worshippers don't know about Zeus's disguise, or Argus's 100 eyes, or the endless flight from Hera's wrath. They only know this: once there was a woman who became a cow, who suffered, who wandered, who lived, and then became divine. A story that might be more comforting than true, but that's how myths work. They evolve. You glance up once more. Olympus looms in the distance, hazy and indifferent. Hera stands in her usual place, arms folded, gaze distant. Maybe she remembers. Maybe she doesn't. But somewhere deep inside the folds of her celestial gown, a scroll rolls itself tighter, a name scratched off in fading ink. One story ends, and another stirs. Because across the cliffs of Thebes, a queen named Ino is humming to her baby. And Hera is already listening. You glide now over Thebes once more. Yes, Thebes again. This city keeps finding itself on the wrong side of divine grudges, and tonight is no exception. The rooftops glint beneath a lavender dusk, and if you listen closely, you can hear the lullaby of a woman singing to her child. Her name is Ino, Queen of Thebes, sister of Semele, the very Semele Hera reduced to ash. So yes, Hera remembers her. And yes, that name still burns. Ino's life, on the surface, seems enviable. She's elegant, regal, devoted to her family. Her husband, King Athamas, leans on her wisdom. Her children are healthy. The palace bustles with festivals and fine fabric. But Hera doesn't care about surface. She's here for one reason. Ino is raising Dionysus. Yes, Dionysus. Again. See, after Semele's spontaneous combustion and thigh baby incident, the infant god needed someone to keep him safe while Zeus figured out what to do. He secretly handed the child over to Ino, his sister-in-law, hoping no one would notice. But someone always notices. And Hera, she never forgets a favor done for Zeus behind her back. You watch as she floats above the palace like a thundercloud in disguise. No one sees her. No one feels the temperature drop. But the marble beneath Ino's feet suddenly feels colder. The lamps dim. The shadows stretch. And things begin to unravel. First, Athamas changes. One morning, the king wakes with wide, hollow eyes and the terrible conviction that his wife is a lioness, and their sons are cubs meant for slaughter. He attacks. Ino flees. With her baby in one arm and her older child dragging behind, she bolts through Thebes. Crowds part. No one dares stop her. And Hera watches. Historians still argue whether Hera directly cursed Athamas, or simply let madness creep in on its own. Some versions suggest it was Dionysus' divine aura that triggered the chaos. But the outcome remains, a mother pushed to the edge. You follow Ino as she reaches the cliffs. The sea roars below, and she jumps. But this isn't a tragedy, not completely. Because the gods, despite their dysfunction, occasionally offer mercy. As Ino plunges into the waves, a transformation unfolds. Her human form dissolves into sea foam and myth. Her child is swept safely into the arms of sea nymphs. And Ino? She becomes Leucothea, a sea goddess, patroness of sailors, protector of castaways, the divine mother who rose from sorrow. You float over the foam as her new form glides through coral palaces. The pain lingers, yes, but it no longer defines her. And Hera? She steps back, because the message was delivered. Not just to Ino, but to anyone watching. Help Zeus and you will pay. Even if, in the end, you rise as a goddess. Even then, you hover in silence as the sea shimmers below. Somewhere far off, dolphins chirp. Seabirds cry. And Hera's shadow moves again, this time toward a dark cave, where another woman is rocking. This one is no queen. But her story is just as chilling. And her name is Lamia. You float now into the darker corners of myth, away from sunlit temples and royal palaces, into a place where stories whisper rather than shout. The path narrows. The wind slows. Even the stars above seem hesitant to follow. And then you see her. A cave. A cradle. A shadow curled in grief. Her name is Lamia. Once she was beautiful. A queen of Libya, admired for her wisdom, her voice, her soft hands that once traced lullabies into the curls of her children's hair. And yes, you guessed it, she was loved by Zeus. He never learns. But Hera does. You hover at the edge of the cave and watch Lamia rock slowly, empty arms cradling nothing. Her children, mortal, vulnerable, were taken. Not by illness. Not by war. By Hera. Historians still debate whether Hera killed them outright, or merely cursed Lamia with the knowledge of their death. Either way, the grief is absolute. Piercing. Paralyzing. And Hera this time didn't stop there. She cursed Lamia further. She took her sleep. Not just with nightmares or noise, but permanently. Lamia is doomed never to close her eyes. Never to dream. Never to escape the echo of her children's laughter or screams. So she rips out her own eyelids. You flinch. Even the gods seem to flinch. It's an image so raw, so visceral, that later myths try to twist it into horror tales. Lamia becomes the monster under the bed. A child eater. A night stalker. The thing parents warn their kids about when they won't go to sleep. But you see the truth. Lamia didn't start as a monster. She was made into one. By love. By loss. By Hera. You drift farther into the cave, past shattered bones of offerings, past drawings carved in grief, until you find the stone pool where Lamia sometimes stares. Her reflection is not human. Not anymore. Snake-bodied. Wide-jawed. Eyes glowing like dying stars. But her voice still sings lullabies. Soft. Off-key. Ragged with memory. You might cry if you weren't so sleepy. Or maybe it's the other way around. Hera, meanwhile, appears only briefly in this part of the myth. No speeches. No curses shouted into thunder. Just a look. One hard look, and a consequence that never stops bleeding. Some say Lamia went mad. Others say she became powerful, even divine. But none say she was ever forgiven. And Hera, she never looks back, because there's another woman about to give birth. Another mortal Zeus couldn't resist. And this time, Hera isn't going to kill the baby. She's going to delay it. Now the clouds swirl tighter as you glide above the city of Thebes yet again. Yes, we're back. Thebes has become something of a mythological hotspot for divine mischief and frankly exhausting childbirth narratives. Below you, another woman paces restlessly, her hands pressed to her swollen belly, her face pinched with the unmistakable grimace of contractions that just won't start. Her name is Alcmene, and she's about to give birth to Heracles. Again. Sort of. See, this is the prequel to the Heracles we already know and love and watched suffer. Right now, he's still stuck inside her womb, and he'd very much like to leave. But Hera, she has other plans, because Zeus, in all his overconfident thunder-hurling glory, has made a boast. A promise, even, that the next descendant of Perseus born on earth will rule all of Greece. And since Alcmene is in labor with his son, Zeus figures, hey, might as well make the nursery throne-shaped. He announces it to all of Olympus, probably while swirling ambrosia and congratulating himself on his excellent reproductive planning. And Hera hears. She sips her nectar, and smirks. Then she acts. She sends her daughter, Eileithyia, the goddess of childbirth, to stand outside Alcmene's door. Not to assist. Oh no. To sit. Legs crossed. Fingers twisted in a magical knot. And she tells her, don't let her give birth. That's it. No lightning. No transformation. Just denial of service. You float beside Eileithyia, who hums softly, face blank. Alcmene groans and cries and begs inside. But nothing happens. Hours pass. Then days. You drift inside the house now. The room smells like fear and sweat and candle wax. Maids whisper prayers. The midwife, suspicious, leaves a bowl of incense by the door and begins to chant, strange words, ancient and sharp. Suddenly, Eileithyia sneezes. The knot unravels, and Heracles bursts forth. Big, pink, loud. The kind of baby who looks like he's already planning to wrestle his own swaddle. Eileithyia flees. Hera scowls from afar. And Zeus predictably gloats. But Hera's not done yet. Because, plot twist, there's another baby. Born just before Heracles. His name? Eurystheus. And thanks to Hera's delay tactics, he now fulfills Zeus's prophecy. He, not Heracles, becomes ruler. which is how Heracles, stronger, braver, more heroic in every way, ends up spending most of his life doing the bidding of a cousin who couldn't punch his way out of a vineyard. Historians still argue whether this myth was meant to reflect political allegory, how true strength is often subjugated to weak leadership, or whether it was just another celestial prank gone too far. You hover above the cradle now. Heracles gurgles, flexes, lifts a clay pot with one chubby fist. Eurystheus? Somewhere nearby, already crying over the taste of goat milk. And Hera? She quietly crosses her arms. She hasn't stopped the prophecy, but she has revised it, and her next revision? It's golden, liquid, and falling from the sky. Because the next story is about a woman named Danae, and a very questionable rainstorm. You drift now above the island of Seriphos, where a single stone tower stands like a lonely tooth against the Aegean sky. It's quiet here, too quiet. You can hear the sea whisper against the cliffs, and the sigh of a girl alone in her room. Her name is Danae, and she's locked in this tower for a reason. Well, a prophecy, actually. Her father, King Acrisius of Argos, had gone to the oracle. You know how kings love a dramatic forecast, and received the worst possible spoiler. One day, his daughter's son would kill him. Naturally, Acrisius took the thoughtful, rational approach and locked Danae away in a bronze room where no man could reach her. No visitors. No sunlight. No doors. Problem solved, right? Except this is Greek mythology, and Zeus can turn into anything. So one day, as Danae lies on her bronze bed under a skylight, a golden mist begins to drift down through the ceiling. Not fog, not divine light, liquid gold. Yes, Zeus literally transforms himself into a stream of shimmering golden rain to enter her chamber. Historians still argue whether this myth is symbolic, perhaps a metaphor for wealth, power, or divine intervention. Others note how convenient it is that no doors were required. But regardless, the result is a child. His name? Perseus. You might recognize him from later episodes like beheading Medusa and rescuing Andromeda while shirtless. But right now, he's just a glowing baby in a room that was never meant to have a cradle. And Hera? She feels the tremor. She doesn't rage this time. Doesn't thunder down from Olympus. This isn't about betrayal anymore, it's about patterns. Another mortal woman. Another illegitimate godchild. Another thread in Zeus's glitter-drenched infidelity tapestry. So Hera lets the prophecy play out. She lets King Acrisius panic. And sure enough, one night, the terrified king orders a chest to be built. Big enough for a girl and her child. He seals it, pushes it out to sea. You follow Danae and baby Perseus as they bob through the waves. The wind howls. The baby cries. Danae sings softly, her voice barely audible over the crashing surf. But they survive. Was it divine protection? Luck? A favorable current? The myths don't agree. But they wash ashore on Seriphos. And from there, Perseus begins his journey. One that includes monsters, winged sandals, and eventually, an accidental javelin toss that fulfills the prophecy. Yep, he kills Acrisius. Zeus wins again. Sort of. You glide beside Hera as she watches this unfold. Her face is calm, but her fingers tighten on the armrest of her throne. She didn't stop this one. Maybe she didn't try. But there's a storm coming. And Hera? She's getting tired of playing referee to Zeus's mythology-making hobby. So next, she'll try something new. Not punishment, not curses, but reflection. Because her story isn't just about others anymore. It's about her, and the legacy she leaves behind. Now the air above Olympus feels different, thinner, slower, as if even the clouds are holding their breath. You drift gently through the halls of marble and gold, past empty banquet tables and cooling torches. The usual chaos is quiet. No satyrs drunkenly juggling fruit, no thunderclaps from Zeus's ego echoing off the walls. Hera is alone, and she's thinking. You find her seated at the edge of a sky balcony, overlooking the mortal world far below. Her crown sits lightly in her lap. Her hair, usually braided with authority, now tumbles down her shoulders like moonlight undone. She watches the stars, and for once, she's not scheming. She's remembering. Because for all the drama, all the curses, all the golden apples and snakes and cow transformations, Hera is still, at her core, the goddess of marriage, of family, of loyalty. And what a curse that can be. You float closer, invisible as always, and catch fragments of her memories playing in the clouds like a film reel. Io's terrified eyes. Semele's scream. Heracles' stubbornness. Ebeskia fulpur. Echo's silence. A chorus of voices that once defied, delighted, or disappointed her. But something's shifting now. The mortals don't worship like they used to. The temples grow quiet. The offerings fewer. The stories distorted. Hera isn't feared so much anymore. She's misunderstood. Misremembered. Sometimes reduced to a jealous wife meme with great hair. Historians still debate whether Hera's myths reflect actual female power distorted through a patriarchal lens, or if she truly was written as an eternal warning against vengeance. Either way, her legacy has a complicated flavor. Bitter and divine. She rises slowly from the balcony. Walks through her own history. The chamber of Argus, now a silent shrine with a single peacock feather. The mosaic of Heracles' labors, his name etched under her own. The room of stars where Ursa Major spins, still forbidden to rest beneath the horizon. The tapestry of Troy, stitched with ash and arrows. The nursery of Hebe, empty but immaculate. And finally, she comes to her throne. She doesn't sit. She places her hand on the armrest, fingertips tracing grooves carved by centuries of rule. Not power, not command, but endurance. She outlasted them all. The nymphs, the mortal queens, even the monsters. And yet, her crown still fits. You drift upward, higher now, the view widening. The constellations shimmer. The myths dance quietly in their eternal rotations. Somewhere a child opens a book. Somewhere else a lullaby begins. And Hera, she lifts her head. Because this story, the one that began with a marriage and spiraled into myth, isn't just about revenge. It's about identity. And like all the best myths, it leaves you asking more questions than it answers. One remains. If you were born a goddess of loyalty, but lived in a world of betrayal, what else could you become? You're almost weightless now, floating above the edge of story and starlight. Hera stands beneath the great vault of Olympus, her silhouette outlined in a faint silver glow. The palace around her is still, the halls of power, of memory, of grudges that turned into legacies. And yet, there's one more tale you haven't quite heard. Not a punishment, not a betrayal, but something gentler, unexpected. Because in the end, even Hera softens. You drift beside her as she descends, not in anger this time, but in ritual. Below her, mortals gather at a temple, worn with time, softened with moss. They light candles. They chant her name. Not in fear, but in reverence. Hera, protector of marriage, guardian of women. A name passed down through generations. Sometimes respected, sometimes mocked, but never forgotten. She walks among them unseen, the way only gods can. A mother kisses her child. A bride braids her hair before the ceremony. A widow lights a lamp and whispers a prayer to someone who might understand heartbreak better than any other Olympian. And Hera listens. She doesn't speak. She doesn't curse. She just stays. You watch her move through these quiet moments, and for the first time in this long, winding tale, you wonder if her power was never really in the punishments, but in the presence. Always there. Always watching. And when the mortals return to their homes and the last candle flickers out, Hera returns to Olympus. Not triumphant, not defeated. Just Hera, a goddess with centuries of fury and wisdom folded neatly into the hem of her robe. She passes by a mirror of obsidian, carved with the faces of those who came and went. Io, Leto, Semele, Heracles, Hebe, Danae, Lamia, Echo, all of them, reflected not as victims but as echoes of her myth. Threads in a tapestry she never meant to weave, but did. She touches the glass, and for once she smiles. Not wickedly, not smugly, but softly, as if to say, I was here. I mattered. I was more than what they told. And then, as quietly as you arrived, you feel yourself beginning to drift. Upward, away from marble halls and lightning-touched clouds, beyond myth and memory, past Hera's throne and her final, quiet sigh, and into sleep. Now let's slow everything down. You're floating again, gently, safely, in the warm haze of divine twilight. The stars above you no longer blink. They glow, soft and constant, like distant campfires in a sky where no one hurries and nothing hurts. You let go of names, of stories, of gods with grudges and mortals caught in their web. You feel your breath match the rhythm of the clouds as they drift lazily beneath you, pale and cool and eternal. Hera's palace fades into the distance, no longer sharp or golden, but blurred, like a half-remembered dream just beyond the edge of waking. And it's okay to forget the details now. The cow with tearful eyes, the golden apple rolling across polished stone, the voice that could only echo, the monster sun with serpent feet, the girl crowned in stars after heartbreak. They can rest now, and so can you. Let the air cradle you like ocean waves. Let the stories unwind like ribbon in slow motion. Let the silence fill in the spaces between memory and sleep. You are safe here, just drifting, softly, steadily, until even the voice you're hearing fades into hush, and you are gone, gently and completely, into the dreamless deep of night.